lot of the way we made that show was by not knowing how to make television. Now I know this, but at the time I didn't know. You're supposed to have like repeating sets. You know, you're supposed to have character dynamics that don't change, especially in a half hour. You're supposed to show the character every episode. That's why people are there. But what was like exciting to us is like we built this sandbox, and it's like, what else can it be? You know, like knowing what I know now, I'm just like good for you for not knowing that you're not supposed to do any of that stuff. It was really difficult for that reason, because we were kind of taking the structure and budget of TV and trying to make like indie movies every episode.
What's up, guys? Good morning. Thank you, Film Independent, for having us. It's very exciting. I don't ever get to see Hiro that often because he's so damn busy. He's like the busiest man I know. We both came from music videos. For those of you who don't know, the incredible Fly Low video that you just saw is one of Hiro's best and came out 10 years ago this year, actually. So it's a 10-year anniversary. Insane. A lot of people talk about how great the music video industry is for fostering new talent. It's so creative, it's experimental, all these great directors came out of it. And we've talked about that so often. I kind of want to talk about like some of the stuff, like what is something that you learned in music videos that was a terrible habit, like just the worst thing that like made it so hard to transition into long form, because it is in some ways incredible. Also, I learned so many bad things. What was that for you?
You learn a lot. It's like I did it straight out of college. So a lot of the things I learned, I was learning on the job. But I think what happens is because your runtime is 3 to 4 minutes, I think your concept of time gets really, really compressed. And so I think you learn to sort of get to the point quickly and kind of kind of skip over some of the nuance and kind of like the languid sort of pace of what makes cinema interesting, And I think when we were making music videos, I always sort of butted against that in a way. And even though it didn't kind of want to be this, a lot of times we would find ways to kind of stretch out time and rather than cutting like 16 performance setups together, we would try to find like a moment that we can kind of milk and kind of build like a story around it. But yeah, once you get into like, you're telling like 30-minute stories or hour-long stories, your like idea of what a story should be moment to moment feels so elongated, and I think it takes a minute to adjust.
Yeah, the hard thing for me is, we had to squeeze like, an entire narrative into like 3 or 4 minutes, and I got so used to doing that once we had like 90 minutes, I was like, I could squeeze 100 different stories into this one thing, whereas you had the opposite problem where you're like, oh, I can finally just let this thing breathe, and like I think that's why your stuff is so elegant. Like one of the things that, you've evolved so much since the first time I met you. One of the things that has always stayed consistent is that you are just so damn good at execution. Like there's something that you do that elevates no matter what the idea is. Like I remember when we were at a bar in Venice and a bunch of music video directors were like drinking, and someone came up with the idea of this is probably Shiner, the other Daniel, we were just drawing pictures on a napkin of people taking a shit, and we were all taking turns just kind of drawing our version of it, and then Hiro draws this incredible like it's almost like a superhero just rocketing up in the air, just amazing composition, really well drawn, of a man shitting so much that he was like shooting in the air, and I was like, God damn it,
I love
Hiro.
that you're leading with this story. I love it.
Everything you do just like makes me really jealous, and so I'm just asking, when you're looking at an idea, when you read a script or someone pitches something to you, whether it's from a band or from a studio or whatever, what are you looking for that kind of locks you in? Is it an execution thing? Is it an emotional thing? Is it a tonal thing? Like what is that thing that you're looking for to spark?
I think a lot of times it's like I find myself drawn to like emotional discordance. Like the Fly Low video, when it comes, I think we pitched it as like, how do you, kind of inhabit the kind of joyous, manic energy of the song, but there's something kind of sorrowful and sad underneath it too, and I think that's inherent to the song. And so building the concept for the video was entirely about like, okay, how do you maximize that sort of like incongruent feeling, and every choice sort of derives from that. It's like, oh, you shoot it in kind of this somber, low light kind of way, but the kids' performances are like, as if you're shooting on like a Disney Channel. It's like it's hyperactive and energetic, and you intercut the dance sequence with people mourning, and so how do you create that contrast in every step, every decision that you make, basically.
Now, did that idea, because for those of you who don't know, oftentimes a label will give you a brief and be like, hey, the artist wants something like this, and we have $2 and 2 days to do it.
Yes.
Whatever. It's often like that.
Yeah.
What was the brief on that video, actually? I'm just curious. Like, was there anything, or did that mostly just come from you listening to the song?
I think I knew Flylo a little bit at that point, and he came to me and was like, hey, I want you to do a video for this, and I always ask, like, what were you thinking about when you're making this? Like, what's the concept for the album? And the whole album was kind of about death. He had lost some family members, and he was sort of like wrapping his head around what it felt, what it was to be mortal, and all this to be kind of temporary. And one idea he kind of had was like, oh, I kind of keep thinking about this, like, Black Tom Sawyer kind of thing, where like maybe he's like late to his own funeral or something. And that that idea has that contrast in there already, right? It's like, oh, this kind of playful sort of childlike viewpoint, except it's about something heavy, And so I took that, and then I started pulling up sort of references of like Lindy Hop and kind of old school choreography that felt like really joyous and big and kind of vaudevillian. That felt like the perfect sort of way to frame that,
Man, that's awesome. You can totally see the Tom Sawyer in there. That's so cool. This actually is a good segue to like one of the most important collaborations that kind of kick-started your transition out of music videos was when you met Donald Glover, Childish Gambino. I think a lot about collaboration. Obviously, I'm in a directing duo,
Yeah.
and there's this article that me and Shiner always bring up when we want to make ourselves feel better about ourselves, that the New Yorker put out about a duo in Google, like a programming duo that basically was one of the biggest reasons why Google became the company that it was, because these two people collaborating, and their article goes on to say some of the most important paradigm shifts in creativity, philosophy, whatever, came from two minds. And even actually sometimes when you go to 4 or 5, it doesn't work. And when you just have one person, it's not quite as common. What about your collaboration with Donald? Do you ever have a moment in your mind that you can remember where you're like, oh, this is bigger than most other collaborations I've had. This is something really special.
It's funny because like neither of us are like really good communicators. Like we don't like over explain ideas, and we don't talk about exactly how we're gonna execute something. But it's I'm sure you feel this way with Daniel. Like every time we're working on an idea, right? Like we kind of pass it back and forth, and you just kind of watch it get better and better and more interesting and more deep. And I've been working with him for like 12 years at this point, so like it really does feel like a marriage a little bit. But I've it's so rare when you find that. You know what I mean? I feel that way with a lot of my crew and a lot of like the people I constantly work with. But like there's something sort of like magical about it that I can't really dissect. Like if I had to explain it, it's probably that we have similar taste and kind of similar things we want to like kind of people to experience when they watch something that we make. But we're also polar opposites just in what we're interested in, like he's a writer and performer first, and I have this theory that if you're a good performer, you kind of have like a shame kink, like you want people to see.
Is this
like,
true? Do you guys anyone here a performer with a shame kink? No, okay. Sorry.
No, I think you want to be seen like raw and vulnerable and exposed, and there's like that drive in him, which I just find like infinitely fascinating because that could not be further from who I am. I just want to be safe, like observing it from like a corner, But I like using the energy of what's in front of the camera to serve as like a bigger story, or figuring out how to frame something so it's kind of contextualized in the right way, and so there's like interplay there that's just sort of unspoken,
Yeah.
and and yeah, it's just funny. We've just been doing it.
What was the first video you guys did? I don't remember anymore.
We did 3005.
That was your first?
That was the first
It's
video we did.
so good. That's the one with the he's on a Ferris wheel or sorry,
Yeah. Ferris wheel.
a Ferris wheel. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah. It's
Because then you did the one in the sorry if you guys don't know Childish Gambino's music videos.
if you're not up on music videos from 10 years
Yeah.
ago,
It just go back and rewatch them. The execution is incredible. It just feels like everything just is in the right spot, and there's such a confidence in that stuff. It's such a good collaboration that you guys have. Who's John and who's Paul? Do you guys have a?
oh boy. You know, I got to be honest. I don't know enough about Beatles lore to like be able to tell you who's John and Paul in your dynamic of Daniel.
Well, it depends. There's the John Paul perception before the most recent doc came out that Peter Jackson
Sure.
did versus whatever.
Yeah.
I think we trade places often.
Yeah.
Depends. Like when we're writing, I'm more of a John. When we're shooting, he's more of a John. I don't know. We trade places, which is the only
I think that's
sustainable
the
way to
beauty
do
of a
it.
partnership is though, like you can kind of like spiral, and the other person kind of holds you up, and then the other person spirals, and then you can hold them up. You know.
It's really bad when you both spiral though, because
Yeah,
then you're
yeah.
like twice the weight.
yeah.
That's where I am right now. So this transition from music videos to TV, it is so hard. I'm still trying to figure out TV. Like I don't understand it at all.
Yeah.
What did you have any sort of? I've been thinking, looking back at my life and being like, wow, I was so lucky that I met certain people who were just the right champions or the right cheerleaders who understood something about our work that other people didn't and gave us a shot and just helped us usher us into that. Are there any people that you can think of in your life that really helped you with that transition or just any part of your career?
Yeah.
And then what was the impact that kind of person had on your, if you had like specific examples?
I mean, I think our transition to TV was so weird, and I'm so grateful for it in hindsight because we really didn't know what was happening. You know, like I had worked with Donald for 6, 7, 8 years, and you know, he was a comedian and he's a comedy writer. He's written on other sitcoms, and so when he got this pilot for FX, he just like brought everybody with him, you know, from that we were all collaborating on his music stuff. And you know, if I was FX, I would have been like, no, like if I would, like you want your friend who shoots your music videos to direct your pilot, but like we kind of had like power in numbers, and a lot of the way we made that show was by not knowing how to make television.
Right.
You know, like what now I know this, but at the time I didn't know. You're supposed to have like repeating sets. You know, you're supposed to have character dynamics that don't change, especially in a half hour. You're supposed to show the character every episode. That's why people are there. But what was like exciting to us is like we built this sandbox, and it's like, what else can it be? You know, like can it be a horror movie? Can we follow this guy home and have an entire episode about this peripheral character? Can we break format? You know, and like knowing what I know now, I'm just like good for you for not knowing that you're not supposed to do any of that stuff. It was really difficult for that reason because we were kind of taking the structure and budget of TV and trying to make like indie movies every episode, and we killed ourselves doing it, but it was so fun and it was so creative because it was just we were in the bubble of our immediate collaborators, and we did it with very little oversight because it was such a low budget show in the beginning.
Really? Oh, so that was low budget.
Oh yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
telling you,
I don't know if you remember
execution.
this, but like back in the day, FX used to have this thing called the Louis deal, where like they gave Louis C.K. like $400,000 to shoot every episode of TV, and his mandate was that they don't give him any notes.
Right.
And it created this format where you can kind of just like trust an artist to kind of like build their own thing because they can mitigate risk by not spending a lot of money on it. And it grew over the years, obviously, but in the beginning it really felt like we were in the corner of the sandbox, and FX was like, I don't know what those guys are doing.
Yeah, it feels like we almost kind of have to have a return to that. It feels like budgets are shrinking anyways. Might as well give us a lot of control. It's we gotta find what's next, right? Yeah, there you go. I mean, in some ways, that's it makes sense that you're able to do that because that's 100% the music video contract, right? Music videos were like, I will give you pennies, but you have a lot of control. Sometimes, depends on the artist.
Depends on
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you feel like now that because obviously you've produced so much now, you've directed so much, where do you find, because I find myself feeling the same thing. When I don't know, sometimes it's better. Like that naivety that you take into a project
Yeah.
really allows you to just do something that is technically wrong, but if it feels right, there's something special to chase there.
Yes.
Where do you find that now? Now that you've won all these awards and you are really kind of established, do you seek that out, or are you kind of glad that you know?
I think that's the only way
Yeah.
it's interesting. You know, I think what's good in the end product usually is like a sense that the people making it are kind of discovering and exploring it as they're making it, you know? I think if when you end up making is exactly what you thought it was going to be in the beginning, it's probably going to feel pretty lifeless. You know what I mean? And so how we get to that now is like, we just sort of keep inching to the deeper end of the pool and be like, okay, I don't know how to do this genre, or like, I don't know what this is going to look like when we combine these different styles or, different performances. And then you just kind of like cross your fingers and you're like, all right, here we go. Like you,
You talk about the edge of the pool. Has there been a moment where you fell off the cliff? Like you went a little too far and you're like, oh damn, that was it was a little too much.
all the time,
Okay,
right? Because that's part of, I think you had to allow yourself to fail. That's part of it, right? Because if you're, kind of mitigating risk and doing it not to fail, then you're not going to take any swings.
What do you think your biggest failure is so far? Just
I mean, music videos is like a failing ground, right? It's like you try something, sometimes it doesn't work at all, and then you spent the label's money. I mean, even within the like the show like Atlanta, like there are swings that we thought were gonna land that didn't land, or like like in season 3, I love season 3, but it was a very polarizing season because we spent a lot of time away from our main characters and we made these like little fables about race, and you know what I mean, and like I get why people were like bummed out, but but it's like I wouldn't call it a failure, but we tried something that felt risky, and like it wasn't like a win. I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a healthy way to do things. I need therapy. How do I follow up my last movie?
I mean, you have to think that way, right? Because
I
it's
know.
the only part you control.
I know. Actually, this is like so random. I read this article this morning that made me think about this a little bit. They did a study on restaurants, and they found that if you win a Michelin star, you're like twice more likely to shut down. Like you're like, and I read that, I was like, oh damn. I feel that, and like I don't know if you guys follow Chapel Roan, but Chapel Roan has been really outspoken recently about how much fame is just really fucking her up, and I'm like, just preach, girl, just talk about this. Let's talk, especially someone like her who's just really wanted to make the thing for her community, and then it kind of got overblown in some ways. Do you like? Not thinking about the career trajectory or anything like that, but just thinking about like your process now. Does that stuff affect your process in any way? Like when you're talking to Donald, when you're thinking about like the next thing you're gonna do, is what part of the like what parts of it make it the creative process better, and what parts actually might be hurting?
Yeah, I think that's really real. I think the fucked up contract about making something in like a public like a media is like it's the best when it feels pure, and it's like you're not thinking about the end goal and the outcome, and then you're kind of investing in the process, and you're trusting your collaborators and make something that feels honest to your experience in that moment, right? But then soon as people consume it and have expectations about what you do, it's impossible not to think about it, right? Because then it becomes part of how they consume those stories and the things you make. And so, like Donald and I have talked about, like, oh, they'll expect this from us, so let's not do that, or like they'll expect, or like, oh, this will be kind of like what they want from us. And every time we have that conversation, it feels like it's sort of like corrupting the purity of the process a little bit. But at the same time, it feels irresponsible to ignore it.
Yeah, it's totally a balance. Like you look at someone like Wes Anderson, and you're like, he clearly doesn't read anything, and he just does what he wants every
Right.
time.
100%.
It's like
Yeah.
he's like they're gonna expect this, and I'm gonna give it to him even harder, which is
Yeah.
like so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
look at him, I'm
Yeah.
like, man, you really figured something out, and you can clearly tell he just loves the process.
Yes.
And I don't know how to get there yet, so we're gonna figure this out today on stage.
Can I ask, like, what is your relationship with expectations?
I I've always and this comes from just being a music video director. I love being the underdog. I love making something that just comes out of nowhere. And
Yep.
like that's always how I've been even in school. And so it just changes my relationship with the process in a weird way. That's I mean I could go on for longer, but it definitely it's like yeah, I was talking to my friend about this yesterday. We were playing Fortnite, and she's like, I feel so fulfilled because like she finished a TV show. She made it. She did a thing, and at the same time, I'm so depressed. And we were trying to break it down, and we're like, oh, it's probably because we don't need to impress our parents anymore. And so, and so now we're like, I feel so happy. I feel released from that. But then suddenly there's like the goal is missing, right? I don't know, like. Do you have like if we're gonna go real talk, do you have like this driving? I always joke that whenever you go to an award ceremony, everyone there is just as fucked up as you because they
Yeah.
it's the only way that you would be that driven to want to make something of that quality or whatever. Do you find that is true, or do you actually feel like you have a really healthy, like you're so grounded and so humble? Do you have like a pretty healthy relationship with the process?
I think my curse and blessing is that I hyper compartmentalize everything, and so when I'm working on something, I just completely am about the process of making the thing. Um, the danger of that is when it's done, I can't process the fact that the thing we made is going to go out to people and people are going to have opinions about it. And then, even when it's good, even if someone, like if we get nominated for an Emmy or something, there's like a tiny part of my brain that's like resentful. Like, oh, you don't know what it, how it was to make this thing. Like, this is kind of ours in a way. Um, yeah, as I say it, it sounds really messed up, but
No, I get it. I don't know. I'm all for just like this. It's so weird to have to mix commerce with therapy or with like just like creative expression. It's
yeah,
really unhealthy sometimes, but it's that's just how it is, and it's also kind of the magic of behind all of this.
yeah.
So one of the things that I cannot figure out how to do, and you've done such a good job of, is ushering in other people's projects. You have such an eye for projects, like the fact that you did Station 11 and The Bear, and even things like the Cho Show, which were like I personally thought was so cool.
Oh, I'm so glad you watched
it
it.
was awesome. When you're producing a project, what do you think your job is in that, and what are you looking for in the project and the people that you're working with?
I mean, speaking of like hyper compartmentalization, the way I think about TV is, you're building the sandbox, right? That you're eventually going to make a bunch of sandcastles in, and so you're just trying to create the best environment for people to feel engaged and the right idea, play with the right ideas with the right people. And sometimes like it's very even like I do this with myself. Like I know I'm eventually going to direct a few episodes, right? And so I know I'm going to be in there, kind of building the sandcastle. But that part of me is almost like a separate person. It's like that's future me. My job now is to kind of like create the right space to make something. Which I think this is true for everything. Like I think so much of making something is about making the space for it, and then making sure the right people are in the room. And I've heard you explain it this way too, but like it is a little bit like you're throwing a party, what I mean? You're like kind of a party host, and just making sure the vibes are good and there's like alchemy there.
What about? I'm just curious, just because obviously the Bear is very recent and it was amazing, blew up for good reason. What about the Bear when you saw it? Was it the people? Was it the idea? What was the specific thing that made you like, oh, I could see this being really special?
I think that show is really kind of just out of the brain of Chris Storr, and Chris has a very specific perspective on, on like trauma and addiction and just kind of this, very specific to that character. but also, his sister works in the restaurant world. Like he knows that world really well. Um, and there's something about the setting and the point of view and the voice that he wanted to bring. And we were kind of in after Atlanta, we just felt like there was just so much room in half hour to create something that's not a traditional sitcom comedy. And so I had no idea what it was going to be, honestly. But those ingredients felt exciting, and it just felt like it was all going to congeal into something cool. And so I take very little credit for it, honestly, because it's like it was just like it was Chris and Joanna and the cast that kind of all came together and made something magical.
Yeah, the specific point of view is so key to that thing. It just feels so alive because you're like, oh, this is lived in, this is real. I worked in the restaurant industry and I was terrible at it, so I totally totally saw that movie.
I'd be
I was like,
terrible
yeah,
at it.
I was such a bad waiter. Um, um, I don't know how much time we have left, but I want to talk about how are we doing? Oh, okay, yeah, we got a little time. Where things are going, right? I think that's what everyone, all my side conversations with my friends are always pointed to is like, what are we doing here? What is the role? Even if I can't generalize, what is your specific role in this current transition our industry is going through? Like, what do you think? What do you think you should be doing right now? You know?
Wow. I better have a really concise, thoughtful answer to this. Um, I mean, I think it's objectively a transitional time, and it's very scary. And I think, at least in the TV space, it does feel like a very difficult time if you want to make something unique or original. Because I think there's no incentive to take risks. You know what I mean? I think the mandate is just make something that won't fail. You know what I mean? Um, and so I don't know. I think because we came up in the music video world, after that industry kind of cratered, I think we walked into it after people were spending like $3 million to make a music video. And all of a sudden, we're just like kids with cameras going like, if you give me $3,000, I'll make anything. And so I do think like, the industry feels a little bit unstable and sort of trying to find its footing. But I also know that kind of disruption is always fodder for like young creative people. That's the whole thing. That's the thing that drives the industry eventually. And so, not to put like a ambiguous bow on it, but I'd like to believe that this moment of like uncertainty and what the role of film and TV is, like what's the value of media right now is sort of uncertain. But I think it's just going to create a platform for young punks to kind of make their own thing.
Yeah, this room is full of young punks, right? Old punks too. Don't worry, we're all here. No, I think you're spot on. Whenever something gets destroyed, that usually leaves room for something else to grow.
Yeah.
And not to say that things got destroyed, but we are going through a really confusing time. Not only because of the strikes and because the streaming bubble pop and all these things. There's the sort of that annoying topic that no one wants to talk about anymore because we're so sick of it. Artificial intelligence and generative AI and just the ways in which it is such an unknown. It's like a known unknown, and then there's a bunch of unknown unknowns that kind of spin off of that. What I don't want to ask you to be that. I don't want to say like, hey, what do you think about AI? For you personally, what is your relationship with emergent technology like this when it comes to filmmaking, and like how do you what is your relationship with something like this normally?
It's really complicated, right? Like, because I think when we came up, it was the kind of the beginning of digital cinema, and we were doing a lot of VFX ourselves, and that technology was so new, and I think the reason we got to kind of make a lot of these things is because we were just up to the advance in technology, and so like I do think technology affects how you do things and what you make, and I think that's exciting, in a lot of ways. But I mean, there's nothing I can say about AI that's gonna feel like good, but but obviously I've also seen the industry, like the take the shortcut and the less creative route every turn, and AI is gonna be all about that, right? There's just so many things you can do to hurt artists. I was telling Dan right before this that my DP texted me a photo. She's shooting a commercial right now, and it was like an iPad with a bunch of sentences. It was like, chicken noodle soup sits in a bowl, or like snow falls lightly on da 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 da. And I'm like, what is this? And he told me that the agency was having them read having the actors read these like 7 sentences so they can construct their voice in AI, and so they can change dialogue later on, right? And like, yes, there are ways that you can use AI to be creative and like kind of like further your expression, but like the money incentive is always going to go towards cutting corners and not paying actors to come back to re-record dialogue. And so I think like obviously like how we sort of structured on the industry side is going to be really important. You know what I mean? Like how do we? I don't know. I mean, I know you're way more educated on the subject than I am, and I'd love to hear a little bit of your perspective on it too.
Do we have another hour to talk? No, I think what you're getting at is that this is going to be a really nuanced and complex thing to navigate together. And I think one of the things that I'm realizing, I'm working on a project right now where I end up interacting with a lot of experts in the tech world and in Silicon Valley. And one of the things they keep telling me and kind of instilling in me, even the people who are really scared of this technology and really against it, they say, please play with this stuff so that you know what you're up against. If we completely ignore the thing and just say no to it over and over again, eventually that wall of no's will start to get eroded through efficiency, through all these cost-cutting things. Like that will always win. And so our no's will only last so long before the next generation who doesn't understand the context of why this stuff can be incredibly disruptive will adopt it, and then suddenly it's too late. And so we kind of are up against a clock, right? Where as that slow erosion happens, we have to, as a system, as a industry, and as a community, build up the right scaffolding so that when that thing falls down, we have the right protections, we have the right kinds of infrastructure that can handle the kind of transformations that's going to happen. And the biggest takeaway is we can't let the tech industry set the terms for our industry, which is what we did with streaming, and you saw how all that happened. Yeah, for a while we had amazing funding. Every TV show was getting made. It was kind of awesome, but pretty quickly the rug was pulled, and I have a feeling that something similar could happen with our industry if the unions, the studios, the agencies don't collaborate. We're kind of screwed. We kind of have to work together. Lionsgate just did that thing they just did a deal with an AI company, and I get why they're doing it. Again, it's like if you're at a disadvantage, this is your way to kind of, you're incentivized to use these things because it's the only way for you to keep up and compete. But once they start dividing and conquering in that way, a lot of stuff is going to be a lot harder to fight for. And I won't go into the details of the things I do think we should be fighting for. We can talk about that some other time. But yeah, it's like I've been working with it just to understand, none of it for like paid work, just to understand how the technology works. And it's been really, I think, important because it's really helping me form an idea of what kind of things we can and should be talking about.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents right now.
Yeah, it seems like education is the most important part, right? It's like
Exactly.
it's easy to kind of pit it as like a boogeyman, without a shape, but like it's so nuanced and complicated. It has so many repercussions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the same technology that they use to make The Rock speak in Mandarin is going to be what they use to make Trump say whatever they want, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
this is like, you can say that our industry is separate from this stuff, from like the decay of consensus truth and things like that.
Yeah.
But like the reason why this technology is being made is to cater to our industry. And so if we don't do something about it, then who will? It's like a really strange time, and I don't know what to do. Like I really don't know what to do about it. Okay, I think we may have time for one more little thing. Is there anything that you want to kind of tell the audience that we haven't talked about?
Oh no.
Oh no.
I don't know how to dismount from this AI conversation.
I know. It's not okay. How about this? What brings you hope? What inspires you? What's giving you a spark right now as you move through this world as a director, as a producer, as a human? What's getting you excited?
Honestly, this sounds very like, like woo woo maybe, but like, I've been working with the same crew for like 10 years at this point, right? Like, when sometimes we work with different people, but largely I've kind of grown with like my DP and my editors, and I know you've done, the similar thing. And more I do it, more I'm realizing like creating that environment and process is sort of the carrot on the stick for me. Like, obviously, like, you want your things to succeed and, like for people to see it and be awarded or whatever. But like, because you don't control any of that, the only thing you can control is the process. I've really, more so than when I first started to value those relationships. And like, it's really interesting to work with people that you work with for a decade, because you all grow as individuals and your dynamic changes, and I think you learn a lot about yourself, as you're kind of doing it, and not to like reduce it into something so like digestible, but like, making something is really just about like learning about yourself and your relationship to the world, and so those are the things I tell myself so I can sleep at night.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're doing an amazing job. I think we're done on time right now. Thank you so much, Hiro.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you guys for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, buddy.